Commander Alex Grant stepped off the transport shuttle and took his first breath of filtered air on Galactic Medical Academy Station. The gravity felt light, adjusted to about 0.7 Earth standard. Perfect for the station's main inhabitants, but slightly uncomfortable for him. Commander Grant, welcome to GMA. A tall, willowy figure approached. Its skin was pale green with faint patterns that seemed to shift like sunlight through leaves. I am Director Trill. We are most pleased you accepted our invitation. Alex extended his hand before remembering the briefing. Many species found human physical greetings alarming. He quickly dropped his arm to his side. Thank you for having me, Director. I'm looking forward to the semester. Trill's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Your quarters have been modified to Earth standards. We increased the gravity field and adjusted temperature controls. The director's voice had an unusual musical quality. Though I must warn you, many students have never seen a human before. Alex nodded as they walked through curved hallways. The Academy's design favored rounded edges and soft colors. Everything seemed delicate compared to human structures. They call Earth a death world. I hear, Alex said. Yes. Trill's skin patterns darkened slightly. Your planet's gravity, temperature ranges, and indigenous life forms would kill most sentient species in the galaxy. The students find humans fascinating but frightening. They reached a large circular room where about 15 aliens of various species sat in tiered seating. As Alex entered, a ripple of movement passed through the group. Some leaned forward in curiosity. Others shifted backward. Class, this is Commander Alex Grant, our visiting professor from Earth. He will teach emergency response for varied physiologies this semester. Alex surveyed the room. The students represented species he had only seen in briefing materials. Some had multiple limbs, others had none. Some breathed through skin, others through elaborate gill structures. All appeared to have evolved on worlds with conditions far gentler than Earth. A slender blue-skinned being approached. She, Alex guessed from the briefing that this was a female Lemurian, stood no taller than his shoulder. Delicate filaments that resembled hair glowed faintly around her head. Commander, I am Mira. I have been assigned as your teaching assistant. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Her large, pupilless eyes seemed fixed on his hands. Good to meet you, Mira. Alex kept his voice soft, noting how she flinched slightly when he spoke. The class is very eager to learn human medical techniques, she said, though her body language suggested eager might not be the right word. Anxious seemed more accurate. After the introductions, Director Trill led Alex to his classroom. The room contained medical simulation equipment and teaching aids for a dozen different species. May I ask a question, Commander? Trill said as they examined the facilities. Of course. Why do humans volunteer for exchange programs like this? Most species find you intimidating. Alex considered this. Humans have a saying. Different doesn't mean wrong. We've learned that our ways of doing things aren't the only valid methods, but we also have unique perspectives to offer. Your medical techniques. Trill hesitated. They are considered quite aggressive by galactic standards. Because we evolved on a high-gravity world with predators, our bodies can withstand treatments that would kill other species. But we've also developed techniques that work when gentler methods fail. Trill's skin patterns shifted to a brighter green. That is precisely why we requested a human instructor. In real emergencies, when standard procedures fail, we need alternatives. As Alex unpacked his teaching materials, he wondered how to present human first aid without horrifying his students. Pressure on wounds, CPR, emergency tracheotomies. Procedures humans considered basic might seem like torture to these aliens. He placed his medical kit on the desk, watching as Mira eyed it from a safe distance. Tomorrow would certainly be interesting. The classroom fell silent as Alex activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional image of a human appeared, rotating slowly in the air. Today we'll cover basic human first aid techniques, Alex said, keeping his voice gentle. Then we'll discuss how to adapt these methods for different species. The alien students watched with wide eyes, and various sensory appendages focused intently on the display. Alex noticed several of them shifting uncomfortably in their seats. When a human is bleeding heavily, our first response is direct pressure on the wound. Alex demonstrated on the hologram, pressing firmly on a simulated arm injury. We apply significant force to stop blood loss. A collective gasp rippled through the room. A small, gray-skinned alien with 4 arms raised one limb hesitantly. "Yes, please don't be afraid to ask questions," Alex encouraged. "Professor, wouldn't such pressure crush delicate tissues? On my world, we use gravitational field adjustments to slow blood flow without contact." Alex nodded. "An excellent method for your physiology. Human tissues, however, evolved under high gravity and can withstand substantial pressure. In fact, we require it to effectively stop bleeding." He proceeded to demonstrate bandaging techniques, explaining the importance of tight wrappings. With each example, the students appeared more distressed. For a human with no pulse or respiration, we perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Alex switched the hologram to show CPR. This involves rhythmic compressions of the chest to manually pump the heart. The demonstration showed chest compressions that looked violent to alien eyes. A tall, spindly student named Plex suddenly slumped in his seat, his yellowish skin turning pale. 2 classmates rushed to fan air toward his breathing membranes. "Class dismissed for today," Alex said quickly. "Please review the reading materials on human physiology before our next session." After the students left, Mira approached cautiously. "I apologize for their reaction, Commander. They've never seen such forceful medical techniques." "No need to apologize. I should have eased them in more gradually." Alex closed the holographic display. "What about you, Mira? You seem less shocked than the others." Mira's luminescent filaments pulsed softly. "I studied human biology in preparation for this assignment. Your species fascinates me." She hesitated. "Is it true that humans can survive having their chest cavity open for emergency surgery without specialized equipment?" "In extreme situations, yes. Our medical history includes battlefield surgeries under primitive conditions." Mira's eyes widened. "Remarkable. On my world, exposure to unfiltered air would cause immediate system failure." Director Trill entered the classroom, skin patterns swirling with concern. "Commander, I've received several distressed messages from students. One claims you advocated breaking chest bones as a life-saving measure." "I demonstrated CPR, which can sometimes fracture ribs, yes. It's unfortunate, but less important than restoring circulation." Trill's patterns shifted rapidly. "Perhaps we should modify the curriculum. Start with less intense procedures." Alex agreed. "I'll focus on assessment techniques next time. Build up to the more physical interventions gradually." After Trill left, Alex spent hours revising his lesson plans. He needed to find ways to explain human emergency medicine without terrifying his students. The next morning, Mira found him in the medical simulation lab, practicing gentler demonstrations. "I brought you this," she said, offering a data tablet. Student questions submitted anonymously. They're curious, despite their fear. Alex scrolled through the list. "Do humans really use needles to pierce skin intentionally? Is cauterization still practiced? How do humans tolerate setting broken bones?" "Thank you, Mira. This helps." She lingered, watching him work. "Commander, I hope you won't change your teaching too much. The galaxy needs to understand human methods, even if they seem harsh at first." Alex smiled. "Finding that balance is exactly what I'm trying to do." 3 days later, Alex stood in the Academy's simulation chamber. The large room could create realistic emergency scenarios with advanced holographic technology and programmable matter. "Today, we'll practice what we've learned through hands-on simulations," Alex announced to his class. "I've programmed scenarios involving multiple species with various injuries." The students gathered nervously, their earlier terror now tempered with cautious interest. Alex had spent the past 2 sessions focusing on assessment techniques and explaining the scientific principles behind human first aid, rather than just the physical methods. "Computer, begin simulation 1," Alex commanded. The room transformed around them. They now stood in what appeared to be a damaged space station corridor. Holographic victims of different species lay scattered amid debris, each displaying different injuries. "This is a low-gravity accident scene with multiple casualties," Alex explained. "Your task is to assess, prioritize, and treat using appropriate methods for each species." The students hesitated until Mira stepped forward, approaching a holographic Lemurian with a simulated puncture wound. "Remember what Commander Grant taught us about trage," she said to her classmates. "We must identify who needs immediate attention." Slowly, the students began to move through the simulation. Alex walked among them, offering guidance. "Careful, Plex," he said to the yellow-skinned student who had fainted in the previous class. "That's a Rigelian. Their circulation system operates under much lower pressure than humans. You won't need to apply as much force to stop bleeding." Plex nodded, adjusting his technique. "Like this." "Perfect," Alex confirmed. In another corner, a small 4-armed student named Zorn was improvising a splint for a fractured limb using debris from the simulated environment. "Interesting approach," Alex commented, kneeling beside him. "Where did you learn that?" "I adapted it from your lecture on human improvisation," Zorn replied quietly. "You said that in emergencies, humans use whatever materials are available." Alex nodded approvingly. Excellent application of the concept. As the simulation progressed, Alex increased the difficulty. "Environmental alert. Oxygen levels dropping in this section," announced the computer. The students looked to Alex in alarm. "Keep working," he encouraged. "In real emergencies, conditions often worsen while you're treating patients. You must adapt and continue." To his surprise, the students rose to the challenge. They began moving victims to a safer area while continuing treatment. They worked together, combining their knowledge of different physiologies with the human techniques Alex had taught them. When the simulation ended, the students seemed energized rather than frightened. "Your adaptability is impressive," Alex told them. "You're beginning to understand a key element of human emergency response: flexibility in crisis." Director Trill, who had been observing from the control room, entered with skin patterns glowing bright green, a sign of excitement, Alex had learned. "Remarkable progress," Commander Trill said. "I've never seen students integrate new medical concepts so quickly." After class, several students lingered to ask questions. Their initial fear was transforming into professional curiosity. "Commander," asked one student with translucent skin that revealed a complex circulatory system, "would a tourniquet ever be appropriate for my species?" "Let's analyze your physiology and find out," Alex replied. Later, as Alex and Mira were reviewing the simulation data, Zorn approached tentatively. "Professor, I've been studying Earth's history of wilderness medicine," the small alien said. "The concept of using available resources is fascinating. On my homeworld, we rely entirely on technology. Without it, we would be helpless." Alex smiled. "That's why I believe sharing these techniques across species is valuable. Technology can fail, but adaptability rarely does." Mira's filaments glowed more brightly. "The Academy is planning a field trip to Outpost Station next week. Perhaps you could demonstrate some of these improvisation techniques in a real environment." "Excellent idea," Alex agreed, not knowing that this educational opportunity would soon become far more real than any of them had planned. Outpost Station hung in space like a gleaming silver wheel. The transport shuttle carrying Alex, Director Trill, and the 15 students docked smoothly at one of the outer arms. "Welcome to Outpost Station," announced the pilot. "This station serves as a trading hub and research facility for 17 different species. It's an excellent place to observe multi-species medicine in practice." The students filed out of the shuttle, chattering excitedly about their first field trip. Alex noticed how much more relaxed they seemed around him now. Even Plex no longer flinched when Alex moved suddenly. "We'll tour the medical bay first," Director Trill explained, skin patterns shifting to a formal pattern. "Then observe some standard treatment protocols." The group followed a winding corridor toward the center of the station. Mira walked beside Alex, her luminescent filaments pulsing with questions she was too shy to ask. "Something on your mind?" Alex prompted gently. "I was wondering about emergency evacuation procedures for humans," she said. "Your species seems to prioritize saving others before yourselves. Is that cultural or biological?" Before Alex could answer, a deep rumble shook the station. The lights flickered ominously. "What was that?" Zorn asked, four arms instinctively reaching for support. A station-wide announcement blared. "Alert! Maintenance accident in Section 7. Possible hull integrity compromise. All personnel implement safety protocols." Director Trill's skin pattern swirled with alarm. "Section 7 is 2 corridors away from us." Another violent shake rocked the station. This time, a terrible screech of tearing metal followed. Emergency lights flashed red as the artificial gravity fluctuated. "Everyone stay calm," Alex commanded. "Move away from the outer walls." Too late. A powerful blast wave knocked them off their feet as emergency bulkheads slammed down nearby. Alex was first to recover, immediately assessing the situation through the dust-filled air. Several students lay on the floor, some moving, others still. Director Trill was pinned under a fallen ceiling panel, green fluid leaking from a gash in one limb. Worst of all, Mira had been thrown against a wall and now lay crumpled and motionless, blue skin pale. The emergency announcement continued. "Medical bay damage. Emergency responders delayed. All uninjured personnel evacuate to Central Hub." Alex made a quick decision. "This corridor will hold atmosphere. We can't move the injured until we've stabilized them." He turned to the students who were regaining consciousness. "This is no longer a simulation. We have real injuries and need to act now." Fear rippled through the group, but then Zorn stepped forward. "What should we do, Professor?" "First, assess who needs immediate attention." Alex moved to Mira, checking her vital signs as he learned to do for her species. Her pulse was weak, and a deep gash on her torso leaked bright blue fluid. "Mira's condition is critical," he announced. "Plex, help me with her." "Zorn, assemble a team to free Director Trill." The students moved with surprising efficiency despite their fear. Alex turned his full attention to Mira, knowing she would die without immediate intervention. "I need clean fabric and something rigid for a pressure bandage," he told Plex. As Alex prepared to treat Mira using techniques that would horrify his students, he heard a gasp behind him. "You can't use pressure on a Lumerian." It was Director Trill, still pinned but conscious. "Their internal structures will collapse." "With respect, Director, standard Lumerian protocols won't stop this kind of hemorrhage," Alex replied firmly. "She'll die without intervention." The alien students watched in horror as Alex prepared to use human first aid techniques on Mira. For all their simulations and lessons, nothing had prepared them for seeing these methods applied to a real patient, especially one they knew. "Trust me," Alex said, meeting each of their eyes. "This is what humans do. We adapt to survive." Alex worked quickly, tearing the strip from his uniform. "Plex, hold this bandage. When I say press, apply firm pressure here, just enough to slow the bleeding without crushing tissue." I can't," stammered Plex, his yellow skin paling further. "We're taught never to compress a Lumerian wound." Zorn suddenly appeared at Alex's side. "I'll do it," the small alien said, determination in his voice. "Tell me exactly how." Alex guided Zorn's hands to the correct position. "Like this, gentle but steady pressure." Director Trill called out from where 2 students were working to free him. "Commander, please. Lumerian medical protocols specifically forbid pressure treatments." "Standard protocols assume standard equipment," Alex replied. not looking up. We have neither time nor proper tools. Mira's breathing grew more labored. The blue fluid, her equivalent of blood, continued to seep through the makeshift bandage. Alex knew he needed to act more aggressively. "I need something to seal this wound," he said, "something that can harden and create temporary pressure." One student, a gelatinous being named Vel, moved forward. "My species produces a natural adhesive for emergencies." Vel extended a pseudopod that secreted a clear, thick substance. "Perfect," Alex said. "Is it biocompatible with Lemurians?" "Yes, we use it in multi-species research labs," Vel confirmed. Alex carefully applied the adhesive around the wound edges. "Now I need something to cauterize the deeper vessels." A horrified murmur swept through the watching students. "Cauterize." Trill's voice rose in alarm. "That's barbaric. You'll kill her." Alex looked directly at the injured director. "What would your medical team do for this injury with a fully equipped medical bay?" "They would use a cellular regeneration field tow." "We don't have that." Alex cut in. "We have what's here. What's now?" Human medicine developed in environments where advanced technology wasn't always available. Alex turned to a reptilian student. "Kryn, your species has higher body temperature. Can you focus heat through your digits?" Kryn stepped forward nervously. "Yes, for precision work on my homeworld." "I need you to carefully heat this metal fragment," Alex said, picking up a small, thin piece of debris. "Just enough to seal tissue without burning deeply." As Kryn warmed the metal, Alex explained to the stunned students, "This is similar to how humans performed field surgery for centuries. We adapted available resources to save lives." With Zorn maintaining pressure and Kryn ready with the heated metal, Alex carefully exposed the deeper part of Mira's wound. "What looks brutal is actually precise. I'm only sealing the 3 largest vessels." The students watched in silent fascination as Alex used the heated metal with surgical precision. The smell of sealed tissue filled the air, causing several students to back away. But none fled. "Now the adhesive," Alex directed. Vel applied more of the clear substance, which hardened almost immediately. "Vital signs stabilizing," reported a student with sensory organs that could detect Lemurian life functions. Director Trill, finally freed from the debris, limped over. His skin patterns showed conflicting emotions, relief mixed with lingering horror. "Your methods," Trill began. "Saved her life," Zorn finished firmly, surprising everyone with his conviction. Alex moved on to the next injured student while monitoring Mira. "Zorn, stay with her. Report any changes immediately." As Alex treated the remaining injuries, he noticed something remarkable. The students were no longer watching in horror, but with intense focus. They were learning, not just techniques, but the human mindset that developed them. When emergency responders finally arrived 20 minutes later, they found all critical patients stabilized using methods that violated numerous galactic medical protocols. The lead medical officer, a tall insectoid, surveyed the scene. "Who authorized these treatments?" Before Alex could answer, Zorn stepped forward. "We did what was necessary to save lives. The human showed us how." Mira's eyes fluttered open, her filaments glowing weakly but steadily. 3 days after the accident, Alex sat in an uncomfortable chair facing the Academy Medical Board. 5 senior medical officials from different species looked down at him from a raised platform. Their expressions, at least those he could interpret, suggested disapproval. "Commander Grant," began the head of the board, a crystalline being named Dr. Locks, "we've reviewed the emergency response report from Outpost Station. Your methods violated 17 standard protocols for treating non-human patients." Alex remained calm. "I understand, Doctor. However, those protocols assumed standard medical equipment would be available." "You applied direct pressure to a Lemurian circulatory wound," continued another board member, her voice distorted through a translator. "You used thermal cauterization on delicate tissues. You allowed untrained students to assist in emergency procedures. And every patient survived." Alex stated simply. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Lox's crystalline form refracted light in a pattern that Alex had learned indicated frustration. The results, while positive, do not justify the methods, Dr. Lox insisted. These techniques could have easily caused more harm. We must consider removing you from your teaching position. The door to the chamber slid open, interrupting the proceedings. Director Trill entered, still moving carefully with his healing injury. Behind him came Zorn, Plex, and several other students. Forgive the interruption, Trill said, his skin patterns showing formal respect. But these students have requested to speak on Commander Grant's behalf. The board looked surprised but nodded permission. Zorn stepped forward first. Honorable members, the small alien began, his voice steadier than Alex had ever heard it. What Commander Grant taught us saved lives. Yes, his methods seemed shocking by our standards. But in that corridor, with limited supplies and critical injuries, standard protocols would have resulted in deaths. Plex spoke next, no longer the timid student who had fainted at a demonstration. I was horrified when I first saw human medical techniques. They seemed violent and primitive, but I now understand they developed for survival in harsh conditions where advanced technology wasn't available. One by one, the students defended Alex's actions. Even those who hadn't been directly involved in treating patients spoke of what they had learned. The board members listened in silence. When the students finished, Dr. Lox asked, "And what of the patient who received the most controversial treatment? What does Assistant Mira have to say?" The door opened again. Mira entered slowly, assisted by a medical droid. Her blue skin was paler than normal, and her luminescent filaments glowed dimly, but she was very much alive. I asked to speak in person rather than sending a statement. Mira said softly, "I've reviewed my own medical scans. According to 3 different Lumerian medical authorities, my injury would have been fatal without immediate intervention. The methods used would be considered unacceptable under normal circumstances, but they preserved my life when standard treatments were unavailable." She looked directly at Alex. Commander Grant adapted human techniques to Lumerian physiology with remarkable precision. What appeared brutal was actually carefully controlled. I am living proof that sometimes the Deathworlder approach is exactly what's needed. The boardroom fell silent. Dr. Lox's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling. "We will need to deliberate," the head of the board announced. 2 hours later, Alex was called back. The board had reached a decision. "Commander Grant," Dr. Lox began formally, "after reviewing all testimony and medical data, we have determined that while your methods remain controversial, they were appropriate given the emergency circumstances. You will continue your teaching position." Dr. Lox paused, then added, "Furthermore, we request that you develop a formal curriculum on human emergency response techniques adapted for various physiologies. The Galactic Medical Academy recognizes that there may be value in understanding alternative approaches." As Alex left the chamber, he found his students waiting. "They're calling you the Deathworld Doctor now," Zorn told him with what Alex recognized as a smile. "But they say it with respect." Mira's filaments glowed a little brighter. "Sometimes we need to be shocked to learn something new." 6 months after the Outpost Station accident, the Galactic Medical Academy's largest auditorium was filled to capacity. Species from across known space had gathered for the graduation ceremony of what had become known as the Deathworlder class. Alex stood at the edge of the stage in his formal uniform, watching as Director Trill addressed the audience. Trill's skin patterns shimmered with pride. "When we first invited a human instructor to our academy, many questioned the decision. Human medical practices were considered too aggressive, too primitive for our advanced galactic society," Trill said. "Today, we celebrate how wrong those assumptions were." In the front row, Alex's students sat tall, or coiled, or hovered, depending on their physiology. Each wore a special insignia, a red cross inside a blue circle, the ancient human symbol for medical aid now adopted as the emblem for the new multi-species emergency response program. These graduates have mastered not just the techniques, but the philosophy behind human emergency medicine. Trill continued. The ability to adapt, to use available resources, to make difficult decisions under pressure. These skills transcend species boundaries. Alex felt a presence beside him and turned to see Mira. Her recovery had been complete, though she still carried a small scar, one she refused to have removed, calling it a reminder of life's fragility and resilience. "Nervous about your speech, Professor?" she asked, her filaments glowing with gentle amusement. "Humans get nervous too," Alex admitted, "though we're better at hiding it than most species." Mira had become the Academy's specialist in adapting human techniques for different physiologies. Her research paper, Deathworld Medicine in Low-Resource Environments, had been transmitted to medical facilities across the galaxy. Director Trill called Alex to the podium. As he stepped forward, he saw familiar and unfamiliar faces. The Academy Board, once so skeptical, now nodded respectfully. Representatives from 17 different medical councils had come to observe this revolutionary program. "When I arrived here," Alex began, "I was warned that my human methods might frighten my students." That warning was accurate. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. But what I discovered was that fear can transform into understanding, and understanding into respect. Alex gestured to his students. These individuals didn't just learn techniques. They learned to question assumptions about what different species can endure. They learned that appearing gentle isn't always the most compassionate approach when lives are at stake. He nodded to Zorn, who would stay at the Academy as Alex's teaching assistant for the next term. The once shy alien had become a powerful advocate for human emergency methods. The Galactic Medical Council has now approved a modified version of human first aid protocols for multi-species emergencies, Alex continued. This represents more than a medical advancement. It represents cultural exchange at its best, taking what works from different traditions to create something greater than the sum of its parts. After the ceremony, as students and families mingled, Alex received an urgent message. He found Trill by the refreshment area. "You should see this," Alex said, showing Trill the message. Trill's skin patterns shifted to bright excitement. "Is this verified?" "Yes. A mining accident in the Cygnus sector. A Viridian medical officer trained in our emergency protocols saved 3 workers by applying modified human techniques." Alex couldn't keep the pride from his voice. One of the saved workers was a Lumerian with injuries similar to Mira's. The first confirmed save using Deathworlder tactics by a non-human. Trill marveled. "This is precisely what we hoped for when we started this program." Later, as Alex packed his belongings, he would return to Earth for a short leave before the next term. He found a small package on his desk. Inside was a crude medical kit, handmade from materials found on various homeworlds. A note from his students read simply, "For the Deathworlder who taught us that sometimes the harshest methods come from the kindest intentions." Alex smiled. Fear had transformed into respect, and respect into friendship. Sometimes the most valuable medical tool wasn't technology or technique, but the willingness to understand across boundaries of biology and culture. The galaxy would never view humans quite the same way again.